All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Torah Studies. As the name suggests, this is where we study Torah. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Specifically, the Torah that we study is the Torah portion of the week, known as the Parsha. And this week's Torah portion is called, who knows?
Emor?
Emor. Good.
It's my son bar mitzvah
Really?
anniversary.
Really?
So,
Is he reading it somewhere? All right. Well, still not too late. Still not too late.
8 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. That is a hey Yaakov. All right, so this week's Torah portion is Emor, and the opening of the portion deals with commandments and laws, rules, and regulations that are directed toward the Kohen. Who is the Kohen? The Kohen is the priest. And there were specific rules and regulations. If you were a Kohen, there were a lot of privileges. You got to serve in the Mishkan and the tabernacle and later in the temple. You were able to receive gifts from the rest of the populace. Like the first fruits every year, they would bring Bikurim, first fruits, to the Kohen. The Kohen would get parts of the sacrifices. And the head Kohen, who I affectionately call the big kahuna, as it were. So the Kohen Gadol obviously had even more highly specific roles. Like, for example, he was the only person amongst the Jewish people to be able to go in to the Holy of Holies on the holy day of Yom Kippur. So that is, here, we got plenty. So that is a little bit about what's going on at the beginning of the Torah portion, where it talks about the role of the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol, the high priest and the regular priest. It's about, it has to do with about marriage and who they can marry, who they shouldn't marry, etc. They have all those technical details. Then the Torah portion continues to talk about offerings. It talks about all sorts of laws. And toward the end, it talks about something very special. It talks about the holidays. And the Torah goes through all of the Jewish holidays. And it's actually interesting. This is parenthetic. This is not today's topic, but it does, in the context of introducing the holidays, the very first thing it mentions is Shabbat. So it says, Moses says to the people, these are the holidays, these are the special occasions. And then it says 6 days a week you shall work. The seventh day is Shabbat. And then it says again, these are the holidays. And then it starts with the standard holidays, Passover, Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, kind of going through the arc of the Jewish calendar, starting from Passover, which is the birth of the Jewish people, and concluding with the holiday of Sukkot, not including, by the way, obviously, maybe not obviously, the rabbinic holidays of Purim and Hanukkah, which came after the Bible was concluded, and it was after the era of the Torah. Now, important note number one, the commentaries wonder, why is it that after introducing the holidays, the first thing that talks about is Shabbat? Shabbat doesn't seem to be a holiday. It seems to be a weekly, a weekly Sabbath, but not necessarily what we would call a holiday. Some commentaries explain that indeed this is the message, that we have a weekly holiday. Yes, it is a holiday. It's a day off from work. We might not appreciate it in 2024 when it's a normal thing, when it's pretty typical, fairly usual for people to be off of work on the weekends. That was not always the case. Back in many eras, in many communities, many societies, work was something that was nonstop. It is really one of the innovations of Judaism and of, in other words, Torah, that one should take a break on the seventh day. We call that Shabbat, the day of rest. So that's number one. It is a weekly holiday. We should treat it as such, as literally a day for repose. Is that the right word? Is that negative, positive connotation? All right, I only mean it in a positive way. Positive, perfect. Day to rest, repose, gather your strength, etc. I was once at a Farbrengen. You know what a Farbrengen is? Chassidut gathering, or as I like to call it, Farbring it on. I don't say that at all. Farbrengen, Chassidut gathering, when I was in yeshiva in London. So I would have been, how old was I? Maybe 16. I was in London, and the rabbi there, Rabbi Gordon, he was Farbrengen. He was an American guy. If anybody knows the name Josh Gordon, Rabbi Josh Gordon, who passed away a few years ago, but his recordings of Torah, Tanya, etc., people listen to this day. In fact, I had a conversation a few months ago with somebody who said, next time in California, I would love to meet Rabbi Gordon. And I said, well, he's passed away for about 5 years now. He's like, what? I study Torah with him every day. I said, well, that's a recording that you're studying Torah with. Anyway, his brother, Rabbi other Rabbi Gordon is a rabbi in London and one of the Hasidic mentors, in spiritual mentors in the Chabad Yeshiva. And I remember him at a Farbrengen. This was before Passover, probably when we went back home for the holiday. He was saying how in America they call it a vacation, but in England they call it a holiday. And the whole Farbrengen was about the difference between vacation and holiday. What's vacation? Vacation comes from the word vacate. It means that's it. You're done. You're done. All of the stuff that you were working on, when comes the vacation, vacate. Holiday comes from the expression or comes from the word etymology, holy day. It's not a vacation, it's a holy day. And indeed, this is the message of Shabbat. It's not a day, it's not a vacation, it's not a time to vacate our values. On the contrary, it's a time for a day of holiness, a day of rest, but in the spiritual sense of a day of rest. And that is a gift that we have every week. Today's focus is going to be on, see, we went with grapes. Today's focus is going to be on the holiday of Sukkot, specifically the Daled Minim, known as the four kinds. What are the four kinds? So as you know, or as you may know, on Sukkot, the festival of the tabernacle, the custom is, well, the mitzvah is to build two things, two mitzvot for the holiday. Number one, you build a hut. We build a temporary dwelling known as a sukkah. We build it outside. It has to be made of a few walls, at least two and a half walls. Most sukkot are built of 4 walls or so. So the walls have to be fairly rigid. The roof is meant to be porous or permeable. The roof is made of natural materials like branches and other things like that that once grew from the ground but no longer are attached to the ground. And for 7 days or 8 days in diaspora, we enjoy the experience of eating outside. Some sleep outside in the sukkah. That's already a higher level. That's already ninja level stuff. I don't do that. Chabad custom is not to sleep in the sukkah, but we definitely eat in the sukkah, rain or shine, like the mail carriers. We are out there doing our thing. That is the sukkah. There's another mitzvah, the second major mitzvah in the holiday of Sukkot is the mitzvah of the Daled Minim, the 4 kinds or the 4 species. This refers to the mitzvah of gathering together 4 different types of plants and binding them together, at least 3 out of 4 together, holding them in proximity, saying a blessing, and then doing the shake. Shake, rattle, and roll. That is how we roll on Sukkot. I remember seeing a tweet at some point. What do they call it now? An X? I don't know what they call it. I remember seeing a tweet maybe a few years ago. Somebody's like, I don't know if this might have been in on the joke, but it was like, oh my gosh, I saw somebody walking down the street with a giant asparagus. No, it was not a giant asparagus. It was a lulav, hadas, arava, esrog, combo. That is probably what they saw walking down the street. You may have seen these in person. You may have experienced the mitzvah yourself, or you may have, like this fellow who tweeted that, you may have seen people holding giant asparaguses or plants and wonder what was going on. Today, we're going to explore the deeper meaning of this mitzvah and answer the question that I asked in the email. If you're not getting the email, let me know. I'll add you to the email list. You can tweet at me. I'm kidding. Don't tweet at me. Send me a message. Somehow find a way to get your email to me and I'll add you to the list. But I wrote in the email, the question of the day is, what do Moses and Mark Zuckerberg have in common? What do Moses and Mark Zuckerberg have in common? That is a question to keep on the table as we go through tonight's topic. Let's read. We're going to start. I know many of you have the book. Some of you do not have the book. If you do not have the book, well, either way, I'm going to put up the text on the screen so that we can all read it together. I'm Sandrine. I'm going to ask you to read text number 1 in a moment. This is coming from this week's Torah portion in Leviticus chapter 23, sorry, new glasses. Leviticus 23, and this is the section where it deals with, transitions are working, where it deals with the holiday of Sukkot. Give me 1 second. Let me pull this up on the screen. Hold on, Sandrine. I'm keeping you in a holding pattern for just a quick second. What? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Torah studies. Boom. There we go. What's up? Can you guys see that thumbs up online if you can see that? What's up with the willow? You guys see that? Yep.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, great. Sandrine, please take it away. Text 1.
And you should take for yourself on the first day a beautiful fruit of a tree, date palm fronds, a branch of a dense leaf tree, and willows of the brook, and you should rejoice before your God for 7 days.
Okay, so here we go. So here we have the biblical mitzvah. This is the place in the Torah. This is the source of carrying a giant asparagus, as it were, on the holiday. This is it. Right here, this is it. The Torah says, take for yourself on the first day 4 kinds. Number 1, 4 species. A beautiful fruit of a tree, date palm fronds, branch of a dense leaf tree, and willows of the brook. I want you to notice how vague the Torah is. Now, we know these 4 items to be in order. We know them to be an esrog, beautiful fruit of a tree, a lulav, date palm fronds, the hadas, the myrtle, a branch of a dense leaf tree, and the arava, willows of the brook. We know those to be those based on tradition and the commentaries, which we will get into. But I have a basic question, a question that I'm sure you've wondered many times in many different contexts. And I know this is a question that many of you have had because you've asked me, and we've discussed this in other contexts, and sometimes it can be frustrating. And the question on the table is, if the Torah is referring to an esrog, a lulav, hadas, and a rava, can you finish my question?
Why doesn't it just say it?
Why doesn't it just say it? Why is it so vague? Why does it say the fruit of a bee? I'm going to show it back on the screen over here, but you guys have it in front of you in person. Take a look at this. Take a look at how vague it is. It says, right, a beautiful fruit of a tree. Beautiful fruit of a tree. That could be, what are we leaving that up to interpretation? Beautiful, like whatever you feel is beautiful? No, it means a citron, an esrog. That's a very specific fruit. Date palm fronds. Just say a lulav. Let's go. Let's be clear. A branch of a dense leaf tree. It's like, what are we doing? Is this a scavenger hunt? Like, what are we actually doing here? Why not just be clear? Willows of the brook. What is up with that? So I want to share with you the following insight, and this is true not only in this context, but in many different contexts. Every time the Torah is vague, every time the Torah is allegedly unclear, it's for a reason. It's not like accident. It's not like God wants us to work harder to figure stuff out, although maybe. But it's not. That's definitely not the core of the reason. The reason is because by alluding to or by referring to the 4 kinds with this type of language, it actually teaches us, and this is the important point, it teaches us many laws about the 4 different items. In other words, if it would just say an esrog, we wouldn't know the details about what that esrog should look like, how old it should be, how big it should be, etc. If it just said date palm fronds, we wouldn't know details about that item. Likewise, dense leaf tree, etc. If it would have just said the name of the item, we would have lost a lot of information. The fact that it says these elements of description, although on the one hand, it creates an element of vagueness, on the other hand, it also clarifies a lot. So what we're going to do now is, for the next several texts, we're going to look at the Code of Jewish Law. This is going to be very cool. We're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. This is the Code of Jewish Law as penned by the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, as is well known, or maybe not well known. There are different iterations of the Code of Jewish Law. It's all Shulchan Aruch, it's all Code of Jewish Law. All versions are, but the one that the Alter Rebbe penned a few hundred years ago was, I would call it, a more updated version with, after the original Code of Jewish Law was written, there was a lot more discussion and discourse, commentaries. So what the Alter Rebbe did was he took the conversation from what was then the past a few hundred years, consolidated it, wrote some explanations on it, and kind of reworked it. So what we're going to do is look at some of these texts and see some of the laws regarding the 4 kinds and see how they're derived from the fact that the Torah doesn't explicitly say what the 4 kinds are. Does this make sense? You with me on this? Let me just say this much clearer. The question is, why doesn't the Torah say clearly what the 4 kinds are? And the answer is because in not doing so, the Torah actually shares with us more details about the items than we would have had otherwise. What are those details? Let's see it. Let's see it. Mira, if you don't mind, please read text number 2. I'll give you the all clear. All clear.
There is no maximum limit to the size of an etrog. It is valid even if it is so big that it must be carried on one's shoulder. There is, however, a minimum limit. An etrog smaller than the size of an egg is invalid, because most etrogim grow to no less than the size of an egg. Hence, the fact that an etrog has not grown to that size shows that it is not fully grown. And the Torah's expression, fruit of a tree, implies a fruit that is complete.
So let's pause here. Before we turn the page, let's pause here for a moment, because this is powerful. Look at what the Alter Rebbe says. Look what the Code of Jewish Law says. It says like this, that when it comes to the esrog, we have the following detail. There is no maximum size, but there is a minimum size. Now, if you've hung around Chabad on the holiday of Sukkot, you may have noticed that some Chabadniks have very large esrogim. Have you ever seen that? They come from Italy, some from Israel, Italy, whatever, and sometimes they're larger than the average esrog. It's like the Rebbe's esrog was very large, so it's like, anyway. Huh?
It's
just in the U.S. You saying in other countries they're just regular size?
No, there was a.
But they're all imported.
There was a Jewish film festival movie about a non-Jewish esrog farmer.
Really?
Yeah, and
not Ushpizin, not the old. No, this is something else.
A non-Jewish esrog farmer. It was a fascinating movie.
Huh?
Where was it?
It was an. I mean, it was a fiction, but it was really cool.
Interesting.
Can they actually grow like so big that you'd have to carry?
I've never seen one so big that would have to be carried on the shoulder. I think that could be hyperbole. Although
elephantitis of the esrog.
Although I've never, just because I've never seen doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But here's the deal. There are esrogim that are very large. Like I've seen ones that are literally like this big.
Wow.
I mean, you can carry it. Yeah, it's very, very large esrog. Huh?
There must be several $1,000.
I'm not sure. I mean, they can get very expensive. Yeah.
I've seen also have more the willow.
Yeah, we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Chabad typically does a lot of willows, but we'll get to the willow in a second. No, not the myrtle. We go wild the myrtle. Yeah, but we'll get there. So the Alter Rebbe says that Code of Jewish Law says the following: that there's no maximum size, but there is a minimum size, and that's what I want to focus on now. And what's the minimum size? The size of an egg. If it's smaller than an egg, it's like, oh, look, I got a miniature. Oh, I got Fabergé. Fabergé, are those the fancy eggs? Did I get that right? Yeah, I got a Fabergé esrog. Nope, not okay. If it's smaller than the size of an egg, nish gut, it's not good. Why? Listen to this. The Alter Rebbe says, where do we derive it from? We derive it from the very text that we thought was vague. Vague, you say? Not vague at all. It's telling us a message. Fruit of a tree implies a fruit that is a real fruit, a full-grown fruit. If it would have just said an esrog, I might have thought any esrog, even a miniature one, right? Even one maybe that's dried out. A dried out esrog maybe is also fine. Comes along the Torah and calls it 3/8 hadar, and that means no. It's got to be a real fruit, a substantive fruit, not dried out. Fully. I know you didn't talk about dried here. Elsewhere in the Code of Jewish Law talks about dried as well. Dried is no good, and we learned that from the fact that the Torah is not clear, that is a little bit talkative about it, and there we learn the various laws. Jonathan, are you up to reading text number 3?
Okay.
All right, hold on one second before you begin. This is the special law that we learn about the lulav from the fact that the Torah doesn't just say take a lulav, but rather calls it date palm fronds. Take it away.
Okay, the term date palm fronds connects the lulav refers to the date. Since the Torah used the term kaput tamarim instead of leaves of date palm, pavei tamarim, we learned that the leaves must be such that they can be brought together and bound together with the spine because they are still pliable. This concept is derived because vowels aren't written into the Torah, the term kaput could also be read kafut, meaning vowel. It can happen that the lulav remains in the date palm until the leaves become stiff as wood and they spread out and separate from the spine. And the stiffer they become, the more they spread away from the spine. In such a case, we determine if the leaves become so firm that they can no longer be bound together with the spine. This is indeed the case. The lulav is invalid.
Okay. Perfect. What do we see? Thank you. So what do we see from here? Once again, this is Code of Jewish Law, and he says the following, that the very fact that the Torah uses the term kapot tamarim, date palm fronds, instead of alei tamarim, leaves of a date palm, which may be the more straightforward way of referring to a lulav, is in order to indicate this halachic imperative that the leaves or that the lulav be bound together, as it were. In other words, where everything is connected to the spine. Basically, what we're saying here is that it's not a palm that has spread out, right? That where the leaves are kind of spread out from the spine, but everything is bound together, and we derive that from the laws. From the wording of the Torah. The fact the Torah uses a little bit wordy words that tells us this interesting law that the lulav must be bound together with the spine. Make sense? Yeah, that's where the lulav looks. Now we're going to then learn. Now we're going to move on to the hadas. So we have the esrog, we have the that's the citron, we have the lulav, which is the palm branch. Now we're moving on to the myrtle. Again, the question is, why not just say myrtle? Why does it call it a dense leaf tree? What's up with that? So here we go. Yaakov, please take it away. This is going to be text number 4.
A hadass is not considered dense leaf unless at least 3 leaves emerge from a single point. That is, 3 or more leaves are positioned next to each other in a circle around the stem, none of them being lower than the other. Even though they do not emerge from a single root, they are very close to each other and stand on an equal plane in one circle. They are considered as dense leaves. If, however, 2 leaves stand on an opposite plane very close to each other, and the third leaf emerges on a higher level than the other 2, or emerges on the lower level than the other 2, and it ascends and lies on them, it is not considered dense leaf. Rather, such a species is called a raised myrtle. It is invalid throughout the 7 days of the festival. Even in a pressing situation when no other myrtle twig can be found, it should not be used even without reciting a blessing, for it does not belong to the same species as a valid myrtle.
Yeah, so myrtle. So here's the deal. Halacha tells us, Jewish law tells us, the code of Jewish law tells us that you cannot use a crazed myrtle. All right. Now, I know what you're thinking. A crazed myrtle? What are we even talking about? By the way, the Hebrew is also interesting, called hadas shote. Shote means, kind of crazed or foolish. Huh? No, that's shikar. Shote means, like crazed. Crazed myrtle. A crazed myrtle is a myrtle where the leaves, and the myrtle leaves are very small. They're I don't know, what do they look like? Light green. Teardrop. And they're like a teardrop. Exactly like a teardrop. And so what? Right. Somebody it sounds like somebody came in. Oh, yeah. Hello. Oh, sorry. Hey, no worries. So it's the teardrop myrtle leaves have to be emerging, 3 of them, from the same level on that myrtle twig. If you have 2 and then 1 below or above, if 3 are not on the same level and proximity to each other, it's not a kosher myrtle. Why? Again, this we learn from the Torah specific words. The Torah called it a dense-leaved tree. What makes the leaves dense? Density is defined in halacha as 3 leaves emerging from the same level, from the same relative spot. If only 2 are emerging from that level and the third is elsewhere, that is not dense. That's crazy, apparently, but that's not dense. Okay, so that's the way halacha parses this. And again, our question, the answer. The question is, why not just say hadas? Why not just say myrtle? And the answer is because if we would just say myrtle, we wouldn't know what makes a myrtle kosher. The fact that it doesn't say myrtle, the fact that it says a dense leaf tree, tells us that the myrtle itself has qualifications. The myrtle itself has to be specifically looking a certain way. So when you buy the hadassim for your lulav, it will typically say hadas mushulash. You know what that means? That means that it has a hadas that is in triplicate. That means that it has all 3 coming out of the same spot. It will literally say it on the packaging. Your kosher hadas is not just a myrtle branch. It's a myrtle branch that follows the rules. Where are the rules coming from? The Torah. Yes.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Number 1, is shota at all related to sota, the cheating name?
So yes, there is an etymological connection between shota and sota. Sota is the straying spouse. And the idea here is that shota, which is foolish or whatever, crazy, that it doesn't, right? It's not, but it means that it's deviating from if there's a path that's what we would call like a normal or regular path, this is deviating from that. And indeed, it says that that the person who strays, right, is also deviating from the correct or normative path. So that would be a connection.
Question 2. Why can't the Torah say a myrtle that is in triplicate?
Good question. I don't have a good answer for that. The question is, why not just say a myrtle that is in triplicate? Good. Why not just be very specific? So there could be other things that are learned that are derived from it. You know, you have, and I don't remember, so I can't really jump into this right now. First of all, timing, but also I don't have it clear right now based on memory. But you have the same question about meat and milk, right? Like the Torah says 3 times, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, which we derive to mean that you can't cook meat and milk together, you can't eat meat and milk together, you can't even derive benefit from the cooking or the mixing of meat and milk together because it says it 3 times. Why not just say it clearly? You know, each time, just say, don't cook, don't eat, don't. Why make this? I make this so complicated, and there are reasons, there are halachic inferences that we learn from the fact that the Torah says it in this specific way and not in a different way. And we have a similar idea here. So as to your question, why not just say a myrtle that is in triplicate? I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question, but we might have missed something else that, you know, that also exists in halacha. So these are just examples of things that we're learning from the fact that the Torah, you know, deviates from what we might have thought it should have said. Now, we've done 3 out of 4. So just to recap before and we'll see soon. I don't want to tip my hat too much, but I am going to. The 4th, which is the willow, is going to be radically different than the other 3. But we'll get there in a second. But let's just recap the first 3. So first 3 of the 4 species are the esrog citron, the lulav palm branch, and the hadas myrtle. The Torah refers to the esrog as the fruit of a beautiful tree to tell us that it has to be of a certain growth size and it can't be dried out. It has to be like a fruit, a good looking fruit. Number 2, when it comes to the date palm frond, it uses specific language to indicate that it has to be all together, can't have opened up, etc. It has to be all kind of co-joined by the spine, if that's the right word. And the 3rd species is the myrtle, and it says the myrtle is a thick-leaved branch, and that tells us that it has to be in triplicate, 3 leaves coming out from the same spot, as opposed to crazy myrtles, which are all over the place. Now, what we're going to
I have just one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Pre-Eitz Hadar, it's fruit of a beautiful tree. Okay, so why is that an asterisk tree? Could be a fig tree. Could be a.
Right. Good question. Right? How do we know? How do we know that's an asterisk? Excellent question.
Right.
This just short answer is because we know. It's like we have a tradition. We have the tradition that when God told Moshe, fruit of a beautiful tree, he also showed him. In fact, one medrash says he took him to Calabria of Italy. And he showed, that's why Chabad gets typically from Italy. Also, it's designer. Hey, kidding. No, but it's one medrash says that God took Moses, right, on the clouds, as it were, or whatever it is, and took him to Calabria of Italy, where a lot of esrogim grow. And that's where he showed him what an esrog is. It's almost like, it's a good question, but it's similar to the question of how do we know what tefillin are? You know, the black, right, tefillin, black boxes that we wear on our arm and on our head. It doesn't say that anywhere. It says, put totafot. Totafot. What are totafot? So we know based on tradition that it's black boxes, black leather boxes that have scrolls inside. How do we know this? Doesn't say. By the way, even with regard to ritual slaughter, if you're a meat eater, right, kosher meat, how do you get kosher meat? You have to take a kosher animal. That is clear in Torah. And then you have to prepare it, slaughter it, etc., in a very highly specific way. Well, how do we know how to do that? Interestingly, there is no place in Torah where it says clearly how to slaughter an animal. In fact, the Torah says in one place that you should slaughter it as I've told you. But meanwhile, if you look in the 5 books of Moses, it doesn't say that anywhere. The implication is, again, we have this idea, this notion that there is a tradition, that even as God told Moses what to write down in the written Torah, there was an oral tradition, i.e. God said to Moses, and here's what it means, right? Here are the details. So fruit of a beautiful tree, it's an esrog. But I'm calling it a fruit of a beautiful tree again for the reasons that we specified. Now, we have one more item left, and this is it. This is the one that's different, but the one that teaches us an unbelievable lesson and a powerful takeaway for our own lives and relationships and really the world at large and stuff that's going on in modern, just right now. So here we go. The fourth item.
Sorry, real quick. The midrash that God took Moshe to Calabria, Italy.
Yes.
So did Jews back then actually attempt to get etrogs from there?
From Calabria?
Yeah. Or is that just like a random?
So I don't know. I mean, Israel's not too far from Italy. Right? If you can make your way across the pond, it's in proximity. I don't know. I don't know when that started, but that is a midrash. Midrash goes back, I don't know, like 1,000 years or two, 1 or 2,000 years ago. So it's pretty old source. I don't know. That's a good question. Now, let's talk about the willow. With the willow, we would expect, right, a similar concept, that the fact that the Torah calls it, hold on, let's see what it says. What did it say in text 1? What did it call it? Didn't call it a willow. It said, willows of the brook. Okay, we would have said willows of the brook mean has to be a willow by the brook, right? That would, right? Just like a fruit, it has to be a fruit, has to be a thick leaf, has to be, the palm branch has to be stuck together. Willow of a brook, you would expect it would mean it has to be willows of the brook. However, surprise, surprise, that is not the case. Take a look at text 5a. Toba, please read text 5a from the Talmud.
An arava whose top was severed, or its leaves were torn, or if it is a tzaftzafah, a species similar to but not actually a willow, it is invalid. An arava that is slightly dried, or if a minority of its leaves fell off, or if it grew in a field, is valid.
So let's pause for a moment. Let's analyze this. Talmudic, this is from the Talmud. Talmud says that if the arava is severely damaged, the top is severed means that, like, you have an arava, you have the willow, and you just snip it in half. No. Like, the top has to be the top that grew. It can't cut it in half. Leaves are torn off. If it's not a willow, all of those are examples. Paragraph 1, things that are not kosher. But let's focus on the second paragraph. An arava that's slightly dried, or if a minority of leaves fell off, and this is the one, if it grew in a field, is valid. Now hold on. Grew in a field, not by
the brook.
Not by the brook. Take a look at Rashi, text 5b. Please continue. In a field?
In a field, meaning an arava that grows in a field and not by a brook.
And Rashi is pointing out what the Talmud is saying. Even if the arava, the willow, grew in a field, meaning it did not grow by the brook, right? It's not playing by the brook and by the book, right? It is still valid. It's still kosher. This is shocking. Let's take a look at text number 6. Code of Jewish law once again. Take a look at text number 6. I'm going to read this one. The willows of the brook that the Torah speaks of refers to a specific species that is known by that name. It has an elongated leaf, similar to a brook. The edges of its leaves are smooth, not jagged. Sometimes you'll see willows that are jagged. These ones are smooth, and it has a red stem. This species mostly grows by a brook, which is why it's called willows of the brook. However, even if it grew in the desert or in the mountains, it is valid. This is shocking. By the other 3 species, listen to this. By the other 3 species, we said that look at the words of the Torah and we triple down on it. Fruit of a tree, it's got to be a fruit. It's got to look like that. Kapos, tamarim, date palm fronds, it's got to look like that. A thick branched myrtle, it's got to be thick leaves. It's got to be thick leaves. Suddenly, by the 4th, willows of the brook, it doesn't have to be the brook. What happened? What happened with the whole approach was you take the Torah's words and you get very literal and very specific. And suddenly here, willows of the brook, it's okay. Don't worry about that. Not a big deal. Suddenly it's not a big deal. It's like reminds me, maybe we said this recently, of one of the Jewish comedians talks about, like, if Christmas was a Jewish holiday. You ever hear that bit? He's like, it would have to be very specific as to how big the tree is. It can't be lower than this amount, higher than that amount. It has to have grown in this place, in that season, this color, this shape. You have to bring it into your house between this date and that date, on the eve of this, on the eve of that. You can only decorate it this way, not that way. You have to, when you bring it into your house, it has to be with the right foot first. I mean, it would be
do you make a bracha when you bring it in or after you bring it in?
Right. When you light it, when you brought it into the house, when's the bracha? Thank you. Exactly. It would be a whole question of it. Why? Because that's the way halacha is. Halacha is very detailed. Suddenly, with one item, 1 out of 4, willows of the brook, it's fine. Wherever it is, let's go. No, we're not that specific. It's okay. Willows here, willows there, willows everywhere. All the willows are fine. What's going on? It's a question that hits you in the eyes. Not me, I've got the new glasses. But right, it's a question that literally jumps out at you and says, how? I remember we used to get highlights as kids. Remember highlights for kids?
Oh,
the
yeah.
back page
Yeah.
or whatever had that, spot the difference.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, 2 pictures. Little Susie's hat has a flat floral print, only 4 petals instead of 3. Aha, I've spotted the difference. Here, the difference is glaring. The first 3 of the 4 species, very specific, very meduyik, very precise. It's got to be exactly this or else it's not kosher. Willows of the brook, it's fine. What is going on? All right. It's a good question. It's a question that I imagine you could read this stuff. You read the Torah portion every year for 50 years, 30, however many years you could study the Torah portion, this week's Torah portion, year after year, and never come up with this question. It's a good question. When you look at the Torah, and then you look at the Talmud, and you look at the Code of Jewish Law, suddenly an anomaly emerges. Why are the willows so laissez-faire? Is that the right word? Is that how why is it so? Sorry, right. How do you pronounce it?
Laissez-faire.
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 There you go. Yeah. Why is it so that? All right. Take a look. So why is it like this? Take a look at text number 7. Okay, take a look at text number 7. One more text. I'm going to read this one as well. The Talmud says, the verse states, willows of the brook, plural. From where do we derive that even willows from a field or from a mountain are valid? From the verse's usage of the plural willows of the brook, we derive that willows are valid in any case. So to answer the question of what's going on with this, how is it possible that that we're suddenly not being specific about willows of the brook? So we have a technical answer. The technical answer is that willows are stated in the plural, which implies not only willows but of the brook, willows of the field, willows of the mountain, willows of the desert. Wherever the willows are good. Fine, that's the technical answer, but we need a better answer. We need a conceptual answer. Why is it? Yes, maybe there's a plural, which by the way is not a great answer. In my opinion, sorry, the Talmud says this. I can't really argue with the Talmud, but there were some other items that were also mentioned in the plural, and we didn't make that inclusive. We kept it exclusive about exactly the way it should look. So, but be that as it may, even if the Talmud's logic is sound, that willows opens it up to more than one type of willow, even if that's the case, we need to wonder and ask and address the question why. Why suddenly we're being a little bit more open with the willow than everything else? And I need to tell you this. We spoke about this last week. This may be a recurring theme or it may not, but I love speaking about this in general. Torah can be interpreted on 4 different levels, really 5 different levels. And the truth is, these are different levels, but as far as like within each level, there are countless ways of understanding Torah. And that's what makes Jewish study, part of what makes Jewish study so thrilling and so enthralling and so amazing. It's that, and I mentioned this a moment ago, every time you look at something in Torah, from a slightly different angle, you can find a new insight. We say shivim panim la Torah. There's 70 facets or faces to the Torah, and it's likened to a diamond that's cut well, right? A good cut diamond. So when you hold a diamond, right, in the light, and you turn it slowly, you see it sparkle because the light hits the different angles and it refracts and it illuminates and it shines and it sparkles. And the same thing is true with Torah. Torah has 70 facets, even more than 70 facets. The truth is, it says the Torah has 600,000 different ways of interpreting it. You know why the number 600,000 is used? Because that is the original number of Jews that left Egypt, 600,000. In other words, what it means is there's almost like a space within Torah for everybody to find their own angle within Torah. But generally speaking, there are 4 levels of Torah interpretation. So despite the fact that the number of ways to understand Torah are innumerable, there are 4 different levels. And they are Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. So starting from the lowest, most simple, basic is Pshat. That's the basic interpretation. Remez is the allegorical level. Drush is the homiletical level, and Sod is the Kabbalah or the mystical. Take a look at text number 8. Take a look at this. Here we have a quick outline of this. Our sages tell us that the Torah can be interpreted in 4 different general ways: Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. By the way, the acronym of this, as I mentioned last week, is Pardes, which means orchard. This is what we call the orchard of Torah, 4 different ways of interpreting it. Pardus, Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod. So here we go. Pshat. What are these 4 different levels? Pshat is the simple interpretation of the Torah. Oh, and here we have an example. It's kind of cool the way this is done. When the verse says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, it means exactly what it seems to mean in a very literal sense. So that's the basic level. Next level is Remez. Remez is the different hints and allusions which are contained within the Torah. One of the methodologies the Torah employs to make these hints is gematria, the numerical value of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. By the way, before Passover, we did a gematria course, 3-week, 3-part gematria, numerology course. So that's where numerology is level 2. For example, the gematria Bereshit bara in the beginning created is the same as Berosh Hashanah Nivra Olam. Look at that. On Rosh Hashanah, the world was created. That's kind of cool. In other words, there's an allusion, there's a hint within Bereshit bara, within the beginning God created, to the fact that it was created when? On Rosh Hashanah. Bereshit bara and Berosh Hashanah Nivra are both 1,116. Okay, number 3, Drush or Midrash expounds upon the deeper meaning of the verse. The Hebrew word for in the beginning is Bereshit. The Midrash tells us that this word can be split into 2 words, Bet Reshit. The Torah is telling us that the world was created for 2 Bet Reshits. First, the Jews and the Torah. Although this is not the simple interpretation of the word, nevertheless, it is a true and valid way of understanding the Torah. That is level 3. So simple meaning is God created heaven and earth. A higher level understanding is it was created on Rosh Hashanah, or that's the illusion. Drush is that it was created for the Jewish people and for the Torah. In other words, for good things to be done within the world, which is symbolized by Torah and mitzvot. Number 4, Sod, highest level. Secret is the esoteric mystical part of the Torah. The Tikkunei Zohar, a book which gives 70 different esoteric explanations for the word Bereshit, explains that the word Bereshit can also be split into bara shis, created with 6. This is because the world was created through God's 6 emotional powers: Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, i.e. kindness, severity, beauty, victory, splendor, and foundation. Malchut, kingship, is not mentioned. Certainly a part of the different sefirot or energies. Nonetheless, here it focuses on 6, and that is alluded to in Bereshit or Barashis. The world is created with 6 different emotive energies. The point is not to get lost in this exposition, but the point is really just to outline the fact that Torah, all of Torah, can be interpreted on 4 different levels. What does that mean? That means that any given verse, any given episode, you can understand it on 4 different levels, 4 different spaces, and they're all correct. However, and here's what I want to get to tonight. There are sometimes you can't understand Pshat without a little drush. You see what I mean? So most of the time, each level stands alone, but sometimes you can only understand the simple explanation when you go a little bit deeper. And even Rashi is the foremost biblical commentary. Rashi, on the first verse of the Torah, right, says the following. This verse, text 9, this verse demands a midrashic explanation. You know what that means? What he's saying is that even from a simple interpretation, you need the midrashic interpretation. Sometimes the simple interpretation does not cut it. Sometimes you need to go a little bit deeper. Most of the time, simple is simple. And drush is drush, pshat is pshat, drush is drush. So, yeah. No.
It's most of the time Rashi is a drush.
No, pshat.
Pshat.
Most of the time, Rashi is simple. But sometimes Rashi says, I can't, if I explain it on a simple level, we're going to be left with questions. The only way to really understand it is to go a little bit deeper. And that's what we're going to do tonight. All of this was a preamble, was an intro for me to tell you that tonight, to understand the soul of the willow, we need to look a little bit deeper. We need to go into drush. As you may know, and this is a thought that gets expounded upon usually around the holiday of Sukkot. The 4 species are not just plants that are brought in proximity and recited a blessing upon and shook, but the 4 species, i.e., the esrog, the lulav, the hadas, the arava, correspond to 4 types of people, 4 prototypes, 4 archetypes of humanity, or 4 types of Jews, as it were, specifically 4 types of people. And I'll share with you outside that we're going to learn it inside. Essentially, the esrog, and it has to do with whether the specific item, the specific plant or kind has both taste and smell, or just taste, or just smell, or neither of the 2. So as we'll see, the esrog has it all. It tastes good. It smells good. It represents someone who studies and does good deeds, right? Because a person also, you can either study and be a philosopher, you might be an activist, but you might not be both. The esrog does it all. The lulav studies but doesn't do. The hadas does but doesn't study a lot. The willow, as we'll see, doesn't do anything. Take a look. Take a look at the text. All right, this is coming from literally the Midrash, which means it's level 3 of Torah interpretation, the drush. Here we go. Beautiful fruit of a tree. This refers to Israel, just like a citron esrog, which has taste and smell. So too Israel has among them people who possess Torah and possess good deeds. Okay, so that's number 1. The esrog has taste and smell, Torah and good deeds. That's on a human level. Date palm fronds, that is the lulav. Once again, refers to Israel, i.e. people. Just like a date, which has taste and no smell. Okay, like a date. You don't smell it, but it has a good taste. So too Israel has among them those who possess Torah, but do not possess good deeds. Next, the hadas, a branch of a dense leaf tree. This refers to Israel, once again. Just like a myrtle, which has smell and no taste, so too Israel has among them those who possess good deeds, but do not possess Torah. So you have people that are active, they're doers, community, they're machers, they get it done. But you're not going to find them in the synagogue studying Torah all day. They're not learning. You have people that are learning but not doing. You have people that do it all. And finally, you have the last category, the willows of the brook. This refers to Israel. Just like a willow has no smell and has no taste, so too Israel has among them people who possess no Torah and possess no good deeds. I don't know why there's an A after that. Maybe maybe that's what that's for. But you have also amongst people, Jewish people, everyone, humanity, you have people that don't study and don't do. And that is what the arava symbolizes. The one who doesn't have it all or doesn't have any of it, who has nothing, not the Torah and not the good deeds, not the mitzvot, bereft of it all. Here is the insight. Remember I asked the question, why is it that when it comes to the arava in Jewish law, it doesn't have to be by the brook, it could be anywhere, right? It's when the Torah specifies what it should look like, we're like, don't worry about that. Any willow will do. Why was it all, how do you say again? Laissez-faire. Why by the willow? You know what the answer is? Based on the drush that we just learned? Because the willow represents the person that has no good deeds, that has no Torah. In other words, is missing the qualities. When the Torah says, here are the qualities of the willow, it also doesn't have to have that either. Just like the willow is the person that doesn't have the qualities, the willow literally doesn't have to have the qualities of the willow of the brook to be kosher. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does it make sense? It's like a bit of a subtle point. I'm going to say it one more time. Just like in the drush level, the willow refers to someone that's lacking the qualities, lacking Torah, lacking good deeds. So too, on a simple level, the actual willow that we use could also be kosher if it lacks some of the qualities, like being by a brook. You see what I mean? Lacking, right? Just like on a human level, the willow is lacking. So too, on a practical level, the willow could be lacking and it's fine. Okay, so now we have an interesting insight. We know the halacha, the Jewish law states that the willow is open to a broad range of willows. It's very non-specific. And we said on a deeper level, on a drush level, level 3 can explain level 1. Level 3 of Torah tells us because the willow on a human level is personified by the person that doesn't possess the qualities. On a practical level, halachically, the willow also doesn't have to possess the exact specific qualities. Look, the willow person is not getting it right. Likewise, the willow that we use also doesn't have to get it right. More or less a willow, it's going to be okay. You with me on this? Yes? Now we get to the big finish. Now we get to the big idea. And yet, despite it not being by a brook, despite it not having all the qualities that we would expect it to have, it's still a willow, and we still include it. And you know what the message is? We include it in the bundle. And if you don't have a willow in your bundle, you have the esrog, you have the lulav, you have the hadas, you have the citron, you have the date palm frond, you have the myrtle. But if you're missing the willow, if you're missing the arava, guess what? It's not kosher. You can't do the mitzvah. You know what the message is? That even the person that's lacking the Torah, that's lacking the good deeds, is still a person. Even the Jew that's lacking Torah, lacking good deeds, still a Jew. You know the Chabad motto, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew, right? It means that there's something at the core. There's something at the core of a Jew. There's something at the core of humanity that is pure and precious, notwithstanding the qualities that one may possess overtly or not overtly. And the point is like this, and again, not to get lost in all of these details. The point is very clear and very simple. And the message here, and this is a powerful take-home message, the message is that even the person who's lacking Torah, even the person who's lacking mitzvot, that person still belongs in the bundle. That person still has a space in the community. That person still has a place within our love and within God's love. I need to read some texts as we kind of round out this conversation. Texts that are so beautiful, that it really express the love that we are to have toward each other. And I want to connect it with a video that I saw today about Israel. Take a look at text 11 here in the words of the Rebbe. Here's what the Rebbe says. We unite with the Aravot, with the willows, the Jews who possess neither Torah nor good deeds, just because they are Jews. Simply being a Jew is an essential intrinsic quality that every Jew possesses by virtue of being a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is true even if in practice they possess neither Torah nor good deeds. In fact, even if they are completely assimilated and don't even know that they are Jewish. In other words, it is not dependent on the external qualities or on the external performance. It's not a checklist. There is a value by virtue of the essential reality. And that is, look, it's no different than a child. What we're only going to love a child if they look a certain way, if they act a certain way, if they get certain grades on the test. I would hope not. A child is beloved because they're a child. A sibling is beloved because they're a sibling. A parent is beloved because they're a parent, right? Irrespective of performance. The same is true with each and every one of us. There's a pure love that emanates from the fact that we're dealing with a human being with a soul. Take a look at text number 12. This is a story, a very interesting story that has to do with Jewish law and, look at this, medical ethics. I can probably tease this for tomorrow night. So take a look, or tomorrow. In Poland, in the early 20th century, a few Jewish students were allowed to attend medical school. The only catch was that they had to supply their own Jewish cadavers to study on. After all, it would not be fit a Polish cadaver to help a Jewish student. Familiar with the problem in Jewish law of dissecting Jewish bodies, the students approached the foremost halachic authority of the time, Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grodzinski. They proposed that in order to gain entrance to medical school, they be allowed to use the bodies of deceased Jews of ill repute or criminals. The rabbi, after recovering from the shock of the suggestion, responded, "For me to allow that, I would have to know what God thinks about those people." And I feel like that English translation does not do justice to the response. The response was, "Yeah, are you crazy?"
It's a bad Jew.
Like
That's
what?
Probably what they say.
Say it again.
Bad Jew, like so.
Right. Exactly. Right. That so they said, oh, we have a way. Oh, so the cadaver will use cadavers of no good nicks. He says, who are you to call someone no good? If you want to be, you have to speak to God about that. And if you can't speak to God about that, then stop drawing conclusions to that point. In other words, here we have the message from a rabbi, halachis. This was not a rebbe, i.e. a Hasidic master. This wasn't about, spirituality and feel good stuff. Not that that's about that, but I'm just saying this was halacha. This was Jewish law. And he said, are you kidding me? How could you judge someone else and devalue who they are? They are pure. They are as holy as everyone else. It doesn't matter. There's no you and there's no they. There's us. There's we. And I want to mention this because videos have been going around for, I don't know, forever. It's very heartbreaking and it's very troubling. There's a group called the Torah Center, a group of Jews that they look like very Hasidic Jews, and they're protesting Israel, and they protest against Israel. You know what I'm talking about? You ever see this? Yeah. And
haven't seen it, but I
and it's very sad. Very tough. People come over to them, Jews come over to them and say, "How dare you? You're a rotten Jew. You don't deserve to be a Jew. Pray for your health and healing." And I'm not saying that they're right, but what I am saying is that based on today's class, based on the Rebbe's message, based on the story from Reb Chaim Ozer, right in Halacha, the first approach that we should have to everybody is an approach of love, is an approach of understanding that we are all together and we all need to be together. And yes, there are people that have ideas, ideologies that maybe we don't like, that maybe we don't think belongs within the Jewish discourse. So how dare they? At the end of the day, it's dialogue and connection that gets us further than putting up walls and shaming and blaming and pointing fingers. At the end of the day, we are meant to include the willow and not to exclude the willow. The willow doesn't look like the others. The willow doesn't operate by the same rules. The willow doesn't even look like a willow sometimes. It's not by the brook. It's somewhere. It's in a mountain. It's in a field. What's it doing over there? Why is the willow not by a brook? If it should be willow of a brook, you still have to include it. Take the willow, bring it in, grab it tight, say a blessing, give it a shake. And don't give it a kiss because there's too many plants there that have sharp edges. I'm just saying it means embrace the willow, not the willow within. Embrace the willow of the quote outsider. Because at the end of the day, all willows matter. All willows are important. All willows need to be included. That is the message of today. I want to conclude with one or two more texts very quickly because we're at the time right now. So just very quickly, text 13, the Baal Shem Tov. This is something that I mentioned, but let's read it inside. We must love and cherish the simplest Jew as much as the greatest scholar, just because he or she is a Jew. And we all have one Father. Father, you are all children of your God, and I loved you, says God. All right, text 14, final text. Our teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, spoke very much about three loves, that of a fellow Jew, of the Torah, and of God, thereby exposing the essence of what a Jew is. The legal portion of Torah may declare a certain Jew as unfit. For example, gamblers are unfit to give testimony, and there are certain Jews after whose blessing we don't answer Amen. However, according to the soul of Torah, every Jew is inherently good. I have to stop here for a second. Look at what this is from the previous Rebbe, who passed away in 1950. The previous Rebbe says the following. He says, in halach and Jewish law, we might say that this Jew is unfit to testify in court. We don't trust his or her testimony. We don't answer Amen after a blessing, whatever extreme case that is. But at the end of the day, from the soul of Torah perspective, every Jew is inherently good. All Jews are responsible for one on the back and side. No one has the liberty to say, I'm a scholar, I'm a pious man who puts on 3 pairs of tefillin. Why? That's a lot of tefillin. Why should I bother with someone else? Look, just as two partners would tell one another, look, we're in this together. Whatever's your business is my business. There's no such thing as fighting against each other. So must it be with every Jew and indeed with all of us. All of us, we need to get on the same page and recognize that to exclude the willow is to render the entire bundle not kosher. If we really want to say the blessing on the bundle, if we really want to observe the mitzvah, what it means is it requires us to include. And that's the message of the willow. That's really the message embedded in this mysterious willow that doesn't abide by the rules. All of the other species abide by the rules. The willow doesn't. And the message, because the willow is the person that's not abiding by the rules. And yet they matter. And yet they count. And yet they must be included. And you know what? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, with that inclusivity, with that love, with that goodwill that we put forward to be inclusive, the willow might just come around. Not that we're only loving the willow because they might turn around, but you never know. You never know. And I think the takeaway message is, in an era of polarization, in an era that, so often it's like, I liken it to camp and color war, like, color war, team blue, team red. And we're working against each other so often. Everything is politicized and personalized. And if we disagree, then we must be disagreeable with each other. And we can't get along. And we can't have a normal conversation because we disagree. And that's the culture almost. Comes along the Torah and says, and the Torah is 3,300 years old. And it says, hey, 2024, I got a message for you. I got a message for you. Yeah, a message that you all need to hear today. That is, include the willow. But he's wrong. He's a good for nothing. Not studying, not doing. He's not even a willow of the brook. He calls himself a willow. It's a fake news willow. What kind of willow of the brook is that? He's not even by the brook. And I should give him the time of day? The answer is yes. Not only should you, you must. Because otherwise, you don't have a mitzvah. So you can ride on your high horse into the sunset, but you're not going to get the mitzvah done. You're not going to actually bring together the four species if you exclude the willow that's not actually by the brook. And so, my friends, that is the message of tonight. Include the willow that is not by the brook, the willow in name only. There's a Gino, Jino, Jews in name only. This is WILO. No, willows. No, willows in name only. WINO. Wino. Willows in name only. The message of tonight's class is include the willows in name only. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for Torah studies. I hope you enjoyed it. Speaking of autopsies and medical research, right? Taking a body and cutting it open and exploring and learning on cadavers. And maybe you're wondering, so what do we do? How do we deal with that? Jewish doctors or doctors that are operating according to halacha, how does it work? Can you cut open a body post-mortem? What is it? Lesson 4 of the course that starts tomorrow. That's literally lesson 4 of our course, post the dignity of the body post-death. Anyway, tomorrow we are starting, I'm sure you know this, tomorrow we are starting a brand new course called Decisions of Fate, Medical Ethics in Jewish Law and Jewish Ethics. It's a fascinating course. Even if medical ethics are not your jam, hey, is that cloudy? Cute. Even if medical ethics are not your jam.
Yes, it's cloudy.
It's cloudy. I thought so. It's only that you don't think medical ethics are your jam, because they definitely are. What does it say? Don't know. Oh, don't know what to do, but the don't is crossed out. How clever is this marketing? Know what to do. So this is a Jewish medical ethics course. It's about life and death questions and everything in between. Fascinating areas of medical science and medical research and medical application seen through a Jewish lens. If you've ever been interested in the field or in the topics, join us. If you're not sure if you'd be interested, join us anyway. First class, free of charge. Just email me. I'll send you the link. You stop by, grab some lunch with us, grab some dinner with us. We'll learn together. You'll enjoy it. Try it. You'll like it.
Ari, could I make a point about that lulav and esrog and all that?
Always.
Yes. I just find it very interesting that which things are bundled together with absolutely no way to get loose.
Oh, I like this. I like where you're going with this.
Yeah. So it's
the three that aren't perfect. The 3 that aren't perfect have to stick together.
Exactly. The one that's the outsider is the perfection. Now, in order to make a bracha, you have to include all of them. But which are the ones who were tightly bound?
Love this. Good. Yep. The lower 3. Good. We got to stick together. Mr. or Mrs. Esra, fancy pants over there. Oh, I got Torah, I got mitzvahs. All right. Little off to the side, whatever. But we're having fun over here. We're joined together. We got the lulav, the hadas, and the arava. And you know what? Sometimes in life, if we want to have a slightly different angle, it's good to say, I know a lot, I do a lot, and it's good. Sometimes it's good to say, I'm not there yet. That's what the Arava says, the Willow says. I'm not there yet. I don't know enough. I don't do enough. Maybe it's encouraging us to grow. That's not a bad mindset.
Yeah, but it's all together.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's no loosening of the bounds.
Right. You got to tighten them up. Sindrine, what were you saying?
Why more of the?
Why more of the myrtles? Okay, so you mentioned this before. So in Chabad tradition, as I mentioned before, the esrog sometimes are the Italians or the sharks. Those are the shark skin suits. What were they called? The Italian suits. They shark. Okay. Whatever. Anyway, so the Italian
the sharks and the jets.
No, something else. Whatever. Anyway, so the myrtles, we have extra myrtles because in halacha you have to have only one esrog, only one lulav, two willows. When it comes to the myrtles, you can have 3 or more. Yeah. So in the context of Hiddur mitzvah, which means to do the mitzvah not only on the basic level, but to go above and beyond, because, hey, who wants to go basic if you can go above and beyond? So that's why in Chabad tradition, and others as well, there's a tradition to take a few more than just the 3 that are needed. 3 is the basic minimum amount of willows, of myrtles. So you just go a little bit more. The Rebbe used to have sometimes 36 myrtles branches. That's a lot of myrtle.
On his lulav?
The lulav is like, it looks all myrtle all the time. It's very hard. And a large esrog. At that point, yeah, you need like...
Why so many myrtles? Why is that?
Well, that's what Sandrine is asking. Why so many myrtles? Again, in halacha, you can only have one esrog, one lulav, 2 aravas, but when it comes to myrtles, there's no limit to how many you can have. So the tradition is for Hiddur mitzvah, to beautify the mitzvah. Some, you don't have to, but some are like, the minimum is 3. I'll go more than the minimum. Why 36? Then you get into Kabbalistic numbers. Some say 9 based on Kabbalahs. 12 I've seen 18 chai, and you can also go beyond. Consult your local minhag custom lulav. Well, yeah, I know a guy, whatever. But like, there's different traditions. But the basic premise of it is that since in halacha there's no upper tier on that, so we want to go above and beyond. But in general, when it comes to mitzvah, it's good to do it not the basic requirement, but to go a little bit beyond that.
So, Rabbi, can you give us the bat time and the bat channels for the 2 courses tomorrow?
Yes, and thank you for asking that. Perfect. Let's get practical on that. So, Decisions of Fate starts the kickoff of the course tomorrow, 12 p.m. kickoff. Make sure to get in your bracket before that. I'm kidding. Kickoff is 12 p.m. and tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. in person right here in Sandy Springs, or on Zoom wherever you are, from the comfort of your home or vehicle or office or wherever you are. Vehicle, just be careful, etc. But wherever you can join and enjoy. So those are the 2 options: 12 and 7:30 p.m. Like I said, if you go into the website, the Torah Center ATL.org, and go to the course, the Jewish Medical Ethics course called Decisions of Fate. There's an option to sign up, free trial, try the first class. Try it, see if it's for you. It's a great class. It's a great series. It's intellectually vigorous. It's comparative U.S. law, Jewish law. It's ethics, legal wranglings, medical cases, real life case studies. It's got it all. It's a mystery study, etc. So that's happening tomorrow. 2 options. If you can't make a class, it's recorded. Send you the recording. And if you're a doctor or a lawyer, there's even professional credits that you can earn.
I want to...
Hold on a second. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. So question number 1, you mentioned that or one of the texts mentioned that there are Jews we might not answer amen to. Can you
Yes.
give an example of that?
I was wondering that also.
Curious.
I was also curious. I didn't have a chance to look it up. Apparently in halacha, the question is, what's the scenario where you wouldn't answer amen to a Jew? I don't know. It could be the only case that I could think. The simple answer is do the research, look at the Code of Jewish Law, find out where the Talmud, where that's mentioned. But I didn't have a chance to do that before the class. So I will, my conjecture is that maybe it's referring to like a heretic or somebody that's in that, and that doesn't mean somebody who has, questions of faith, but someone who's legally in that category, however they get categorized as that. Maybe in that case, you don't answer to their amen to their blessing. But as the previous Rebbe said, that's on a technical level. On a spiritual level, you got to still love them.
What if he's evil? Like this guy who's, I forget his name. I'm sure you all know. He's a billionaire and he's doing everything he can to destroy Israel.
Look, again, the question is when it comes so there might be, but there might be a way to separate the action from the person. We might say that I would disagree with the action. And we'll try to, and we vehemently, disagree with the actions, whatever that might be. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that they ought to be shunned or whatever. Again, how we apply it, and I think that sometimes the problem is if we're looking at the extreme of the extremes, then we're going to disregard the message. I think it's more valid to look in our own lives at less extreme cases, the person that we may not get along with because we don't see exactly eye to eye. Maybe we can reach across that table. Maybe in the inspiration of the willow, we can reach across and say, you know what? We're cut from the same cloth. We all share the same purpose. Let's work together. Yeah. And you had a second question.
So second question is actually from last week. Could you just re-explain why the guy could interrupt the guy who was studying Torah? Because Torah study is also elevating the mundane.
Yeah.
Right?
So question about last week's class. Why was the Baal Shem Tov interrupting the Torah scholar, asking him how's life, hoping that he would answer Baruch Hashem? Why would he interrupt? And the answer is because although Torah study is a mitzvah, but even higher than doing a mitzvah of Torah study is integrating spirituality in our everyday and acknowledging that the everyday blessings that we have are coming from Hashem. There's an even higher message because the goal of life is not to escape reality, but to find God within our reality. And by kind of opening up the person's consciousness, that God is not only found in the synagogue, sitting on a wooden bench, studying Torah all day, but God is found in how the kids are doing and how, the money is and how whatever. And even if it's not great or ideal, but we still acknowledge, thank God for the blessings that we do have. That moment of acknowledgement, that itself elevates all of the mundane stuff that we have and brings it to a higher level. And that's something truly beautiful. So that was that for last week. All right, let's close that out.
The person who makes a bracha on something that is not allowed to be made a bracha on is where we don't answer amen. As far as I remember, like for example, if somebody's making a bracha on a pork sandwich, you don't answer amen.
Right. Could be. That would be more about the item and less about the person. And I think the context was about the person, but that could be the person who's doing that. That could be reflective.
Right. I believe that's the case. But also I wanted to add that I'm actually growing a revos on my windowsill. The revos from Israel, I planted them in water and they actually have brand new leaves. They have tons of roots. I'm waiting till it gets warmer in Pittsburgh. And when I come to visit you, I'm going to bring you some so you can grow by your brook.
Love that.
Nice.
Do I have a brook? Maybe.
The Friedman, Rabbi Meyer.
Say it again.
Rabbi Meyer Friedman.
Yes.
In New Jersey,
sure.
They're also growing an Ezra tree.
Where, over there? In Jersey? Wow. Hold on, Amy, didn't you say you were growing? Amy, you said you were growing something?
Yes, I'm growing etrogim
in
my backyard. And
there
I have little buds. I'll take a picture and send it to you. And then the question comes up, if I get one of good size, can I use it on Sukkot or do I have to wait to the fourth year?
You gotta wait the 3 years, yeah.
Even if I'm not eating it.
Correct. Because it's the prohibition of the first 3 years are to derive any benefit from. So not just eating, but as a mitzvah for sure would be a benefit. So, but also what we learned tonight is that if it's a tiny esrog that's not yet the size of an egg, it's aside from the 3-year thing, that also would be good. So this is great. If you, I would love to see, if you could send me a picture, that'd be great.
Well, and now I have the objective of growing and my etrogim as big as everybody's head. So like really big.
See that? Put on the shoulder. Shoulder
I'll
only.
keep you all
that
posted.
Listen, you got a miracle grower, whatever it is, whatever you need to get that. All right. Good to see you guys. We'll close it out. Great to meet you, Jonathan. Good to see you guys online. And of course, in person. Lila Tov, don't forget tomorrow. Sign up or just jump in on it. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Lila Tov, take care, guys.